Five-star number one wide receiver in the 2027 class, Monshun Sales, has just snapped back at a media member for his prediction of where he is going to go for his college football recruitment. Monshun Sales, obviously, we talked about him last week. I believe it was on Thursday or Friday. It was. There was a prediction made by Steve Wiltfong of On3 and Rivals that he thought Monshun Sales would go to, that's right, Indiana. Now, of course, Sales from Indiana, Lawrence North, very prominent Indiana school. Obviously, somebody that I'm kind of surprised Notre Dame is not in on here a little bit, but it is the normal suspects, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, Miami, but the kind of surprise team in here, not really a surprise after seeing them win the national championship, but even before the national championship, it was a little bit of surprise, is Indiana, who is involved very much so in this recruitment of Sales, so much so that Steve Wiltfong put in a prediction for Indiana to land Sales in the 2027 class. Now, of course, Monshun did not so much appreciate that. And this happens from time to time with recruits. I've been called out by recruits on Twitter before for talking about them. If you watch a YouTube video about recruits, go into the comment section. It's not uncommon to see recruits commenting on YouTube videos or their fathers, their mothers, their aunts, their uncles. I have been messaged by, I don't even know how many recruits at this point, either telling me to put this information out there or just trying to introduce themselves or hoping for something to go down their way or whatever it might be. Really, ever since I had I've got my affiliation with On3 and Orange and Blue News to be able to do that, which I don't let that affect anything here. Obviously, I don't speak poorly of On3 on an On3 YouTube channel, but here I definitely don't let that affect me here. I speak pretty freely because it's my channel and I can do what I want. So that's the beauty of having my own channel, my own podcast, to be able to do that. But anyway, Monshun took to Twitter after the prediction on May 17th. So I am recording this the evening of May 18th. You're probably listening to this on the 19th or around then. So a couple days ago, Monshun Sales went to Twitter and had this to say: "I keep my head down and work. I talk to nobody. I don't care about the criticism, the predictions, the cameras, etc. I only care about God and Lawrence North in the process. If it isn't about those things, I don't HML. I forget what that stands for. I'll have to look that up. Sorry, I am not hip enough to know what HML stands for. But hey, I love that he's all about God. All right, great for you, Monshun. Love that for you. Hope you continue to do that all your life and do that. And obviously, Lawrence North, his high school football team that he's with right now. I mean, I think a lot of Indiana fans might read this and say, "Oh, crud, we're not getting Monshun Sales." But remember how I mentioned that I got called out? I've been called out on Twitter before. I should bring up the tweets because I have them. I forgot to look them up before I came on here. It was Naeem Offord, the Oregon commit. He's a cornerback. I think he's either going to be a redshirt sophomore or junior this season. No, he's going to be a regular sophomore this season. Offord was somebody who was an Ohio State commit. And when I was doing more like Ohio State recruiting, stuff like that, if you don't know my background, I'm from Columbus, Ohio, did Ohio State recruiting for an Ohio State football channel for some time. I now do kind of Illinois recruiting and stuff like that for On3, but my main focus is here, the Big Ten Huddle, my Big Ten coverage. So I've written for an Illinois website. I've written for Indiana. I mean, I've written for all different kinds of places and done team stuff. I don't like doing team stuff, but I like doing the Big Ten stuff overall the most. But anyway, back when I was doing that, I made a post basically telling Ohio State fans that Brian Smith of Locked On, kind of their recruiting guy, said that Naeem Offord, and this wasn't even like my own opinion, I was just saying what the guy had said that Naeem Offord was still taking visits. And so although he was committed to Ohio State, a little bit different situation because he was committed, Monshun Sales is not committed, but even though he was committed to Ohio State, things were not locked in because he still had visits he was going to go on and everything else. Neem offered, did not like that I put that out there. His father did not like that I put that out there. I believe it's his mother, maybe, that messaged me. I did not get, I tried to respond to her, but she, or the person, and the person did not have anything they wanted to say kindly in return, I guess is the best way to put it. But overall, what I learned from that situation was don't cave when a recruit comes after you like that, because you know what happened. Neem offered is, yeah, he was committed to Ohio State, but then he flipped on commitment day to Oregon. And man, I got nothing against Oregon. Obviously, go get it for you, Oregon. I love that Oregon cares enough about the program to go after the best players in the nation and spends the money the way they do to get those players in there. Love it. I think that's great. But it definitely was not over. Neem offered and his family decided to try to put me on blast, talking about how Neem was completely locked in, saying things like, this clown don't know what he's talking about, all these different things. And that's fine. They can say that. Again, I was quoting somebody else, but whatever. Uh, all I'll say is, like, when it's still so early in the process, you still really don't know. And even if a guy is committed, like, that's a great sign, and that is momentum that can build for you. But it's not the end all be all. So even if Monshun Sales, is saying, kind of like subtly saying like, "Hey, I'm not committed to IU," or whatever it might be. Yeah, you're right. You aren't committed to IU, but you did just go on a visit to IU at the end of April, and you haven't been on any more visits. I think May 29th is his next visit. Yeah, May 29th is his next visit. That's to Alabama. June 5th to Texas, June 12th to Ohio State, and then his final official visit will be June 19th to Miami. But of course, you come off that official visit to Indiana, and you're going to be feeling really good about Indiana. You're going to be liking what you heard there, liking what you saw. And at the end of the day, like, there's a tug and pull with this whole situation with the predictions, right? Because if you want to be, I mean, just a little bit of inside baseball here. The recruiting services will never tell you this, but again, I don't serve the recruiting services on my show. This is my show, and I get to talk about whatever I want. The recruiting services give better rankings and better grades to the players that talk to them more and give them more information. Why? Because the more information you have, the more you can write about them, the more you can talk about them, the more predictions you can put out there, and people are much more likely to click on a top 50 athlete or top 50 quarterback visit. Indiana might flip a top 50 quarterback from an SEC program. Like, you see that out there, most Indiana fans are going to click on that. Well, if you see Indiana might flip a mid 3-star top 1,000 prospect, people are not nearly as excited to click on that kind of stuff. So do I think that they adjust the rankings to get clicks? Yes. Do I think that Rivals for their final rankings does that? No, because at the end of the day, nobody grades you by the rankings that you had in May or June or whatever. All they grade you by are the final rankings you have for the entire class, and that's what these people do. And you can't say like, oh, it's these people. It makes it sound like I'm against them. I'm not against them. I'm just telling you this is how the sausage is made. Essentially, 24/7 does the same thing. Honestly, the one group that doesn't do it the most that I've heard and that I know people at is honestly probably ESPN recruiting, which is so funny because they're basically labeled like the black sheep recruiting of like, yeah, don't go read their stuff. They're terrible. But they're the ones that are probably the most honest with their rankings because they don't try to rank for clicks and stuff like that. Now, does every single group do this to the highest extent possible? No, of course not. If you had 18 different number one players in your class, that would obviously look pretty fishy. But it's not uncommon for a guy to be top 50 in May, and by February, he's, top 250 or something like that instead, because people are much more likely to click on a top 50 guy than they are a top 250 guy or whatever it might be. It's just the way the recruiting world works. And that's one of the reasons why I say don't get too caught up on the rankings and stuff like that. The stars, do they matter? Of course they matter. Like, it does matter. You look at the recruiting rankings and stuff. The percentage of 5 stars that get drafted in the first round are exponentially higher than the percentage of 3 stars. Although they might be the same number, sometimes you have to also consider there are like 1,000 3-stars out there. There's only 35 stars out there in every class. So to be able to get drafted as a 5-star, for them to predict that is really good. But at the end of the day, they rankings don't matter all that much until the very end. And even at the very end, I would say take them with a grain of salt. Are they a good? They're kind of like PFF grades. Are they a good thing to kind of gauge something? Yeah, they're a good thing for that. Are they the end all be all? No, they're not the end all be all, especially with some guys who maybe don't camp as much, guys who don't talk to the media as much, stuff like that. That's how you get these guys that are 2-star recruits like Fernando Mendoza, who go on to be the number 1 overall draft pick. Because guess what? Fernando Mendoza, kind of a little bit of a late bloomer. He didn't do a whole bunch of camps and stuff like that. He just kind of worked on his craft, did his thing, and then he turns out being the number 1 overall draft pick in the 2026 NFL draft. Let me know what your thoughts are on Monshun Sales. I think that Sales is somebody who is very much so definitely still in the mix for Indiana here. We'll see what happens after some of these official visits this summer, but I think Indiana's in a great position here. And I would not be surprised at all if we find out that Sales makes some kind of like midweek visit or something like that to Indiana. It's right down the road. It's a program that he's close to. He can go to anytime. And honestly, I think Indiana has a great shot to land Sales here. We'll see what happens. But for now, we will wait and see how it goes and goes there.